Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today in the shop we have one of our favorite bikes that's come through these doors. It's a vintage Honda Moped with a feature I have never seen on any other motorcycle or scooter. So let's get started. Now, as soon as this bike was dropped off at our shop, it instantly became one of our favorites. And not just because of the original patina or the general styling of an 80s Honda Moped, but this bike also has a fantastic story. Now, this is a 1980 Honda Express or NC50. And this bike was initially purchased by our customer's father in 1980. And his intention was he needed a mode of transportation to get from where he was living to the University of Texas where he was going to school. So he purchased this bike and rode it back and forth to commute to college and generally loved it. He held on to it for all these years after all, and all these parts are original to the bike. This is the original air cleaner, the original, side covers, the rack. It's just as he had it. Now, his son, being that age now, has now acquired the bike and dropped it off, hoping that we could get it running again, and so he could use it for commuting purposes and general leisure. And that is just a fantastic story. We love the bike stories where it gets handed down, from generation to generation. And one of the coolest parts of this entire bike is right here on the front fender, the original University of Texas parking permit for 1981. It says it expires August 31st, 1982. So it just has the pedigree of being the family heirloom. Now, on to more features of the bike. Of course, it's an air-cooled 50cc two-stroke engine with oil injection, meaning it has a separate oil tank to mix the appropriate amount of oil with the fuel as you're riding. You don't have to do the chemistry set of like, oh, I got to measure 8 ounces of fuel for this much gas to get this ratio. It does it automatic for you. Kind of rare for Hondas. They didn't do a whole lot of two-stroke motors, but for the 50cc moped class, you kind of had to do a two-stroke. It has all the amenities of any motorcycle of the era: turn signals, horn, headlight, tail light, and a generous cargo rack. You could definitely put your college bookcase on there. But this bike has a feature I have never seen on any other motorcycle or scooter. It has the most dignified kickstart, I think, that has ever been designed. So, unlike most kickstarts, where you drop your leg through and every time you drop the leg, it cranks the engine over, this has a winding kickstart, right? So the first thing you'll notice is the kickstart's on the wrong side of the bike. Of course, you would normally be straddling the bike on the center stand, or if it's an old panhead, you want to be using your outside leg and, kicking it over. Because this is dignified and on the left side, you actually just kick through and it ratchets. And you put about 5 or 6 kicks down into it. You can do it at your own leisure. If this is tiring you out, you can take a break between kicks. And you keep going until it stops. Now, it's stored all that potential energy of the wind-up inside the transmission cover. There's springs and pawls, and when you're ready to unload it, all you need to do is pull the rear brake. Now, to get this bike in good running condition again, it took quite a bit of work. The first thing we needed to do was reassemble this bike completely. It had been disassembled by the owner in an attempt to troubleshoot the running issue. So once we had the ignition system back together, we had reinstalled the points and the flywheel and set the points to the correct gap, we then found that the bike had no spark. So after a bit of troubleshooting, we discovered the issue was actually in the ignition coil. Now, this is sort of a rare model year, and the ignition coil on this model features a condenser built into the coil instead of the condenser being located on the points like you typically see. So it took quite a bit of searching to find this coil that would work. So once we had the coil in our hands, we found that the wire, which was not serviceable, wasn't one of those ones you could unscrew and remount, was too short to be located here under the seat and run all the way down to the spark plug. So that meant we had to rearrange all the electrical system up here under the seat. Now, out of the box, these came with some styrofoam cutouts. It kind of looks like a cooler someone had pieced together to hold the flasher relay, the coil, the fuse, and a lot of the wiring. We ended up using a little bit of packing foam, and we think it does a really nice job of keeping everything separated, keeping everything from bouncing around, and keeping things isolated so they're not touching terminals and causing issues. Another upgrade we did to this bike is we upgraded the flasher relay from the stock 6-volt thermal flasher, which kind of give issues to 6-volt motorcycles when you're using the turn signals, because 6-volt charging systems don't really have the same output as 12-volt. So a lot of times you have to be revving the engine to build up enough current for the flasher to flash. Now, our remedy for that is using this electronic flasher relay that we get from Napa. And even though this one is built for 12 volts, it still runs on the 6-volt system. And the great thing about the electronic flasher relay is it's a no-load system. So if you lose a turn signal, the turn signal will still flash and still flash at the same rate. Same thing if you upgrade to LEDs, which is something I really recommend a lot of people do. You'll notice when you install the LED bulbs, the turn signals will flash really fast because LEDs don't have the same current draw as an incandescent bulb. So then you get this flash because there's no load. This doesn't care what the load is. It just knows, hey, here's my signal. Here's how I'm going to flash it. And at that point, we had a bike that was ready for some new Michelin tires. And I guess now we need to go take it for a road test. All right, and we're ready for our road test. Now, I thought the perfect route for the road test of this scooter, considering the heritage and the UT parking permit, would be a trip from the east side of Austin to the University of Texas. So that's where we're headed today. So as I said before, we got a wind up kickstart. So I'm just gonna put a couple winds in it. Give her a little choke. And all I have to do is now pull this brake lever. Well, turn the key to the run position. And then we're off and running. So, let it warm up just a touch. And we're off like a flock of turtles. Now, Honda claims that this bike's top speed is 25 to 30 miles an hour, and that's pretty much exactly what we get out of it. It does start to four-stroke, as they say, right around that speed range, which means it's not firing every time the piston comes up. It fires every other time. It starts to, I call it running flat, but it starts running flat unless you run the throttle back a little bit and allow it to catch itself back up. So here we are at 25, gets there pretty quick, which is pretty dang nice. And 25 is honestly about as fast as you want to go with these little tiny drum brakes this thing has. But this thing was just made to cruise the neighborhoods. I like these tall handlebars, kind of bicycle style. They really clear the knees nicely, allow you to get some good turning maneuverability. Now this is the first generation Express that I've ever worked on. Every Express that I know has the traditional Kickstart with a 2-speed transmission. This seems to have, I wouldn't call it a single speed, but very close to a single speed CVT. And it seems as though, as this bike warms up, the clutch engages at a lower and lower point, which kind of makes the motor bog down a little bit. I don't think that's an irregularity or a tuning issue on this particular bike. I think that's just kind of a result of the design. Oh, no wave from the sport bike rider, that's fine. My feelings aren't hurt. Now this is going to be a tad unnerving. This hill is quite a steep grade. When I was commuting to work with my little Tao Tao 50 during my Living with the Tao Tao project, this is a hill that would really slow me down. And oftentimes I'd have to use this bike lane over here to allow cars to pass by me. So I've got a Jeep behind me, but they seem that they're turning. So we might be able to make it without angering anybody. Hopefully we can get in the power band. Oh. Just ripping at 12 miles an hour up this thing. If we had just a little more speed, it would probably be better, because we'd be up in the power band of this little 50cc motor. These small displacement motors, you do kind of have to wind them way up to get a lot out of them. But once we're up in the power band and it comes on the pipe, it's pretty nice. I'm sure the four-stroking issue could be resolved by possibly rejetting the carburetor or tuning some other components of the engine, but because this one is an all-original piece with family heritage, we really just wanted to get it back to running exactly how this customer's father had it running way back in the 80s. And like I said, 25 is really fast enough. But as we're going downhill, maybe we can pick up a little extra speed. We start four-stroking right there at about 28 miles an hour. The customer's father had wondered if this bike had a mechanical governor on it to kind of keep the speed down. And while I wouldn't put it past Honda or any manufacturer to do that, going through the service manual, I couldn't find anything as far as governors are concerned. Starting on a hill. Oh, I might try and Fred Flintstone it to get her started. Shouldn't have the most torque to get started, and I am a 220-pound human being. Not exactly the intended target audience of this little bike, but it sure doesn't mind all that much. The two speeds seem to have a little bit better of a takeoff because they have that lower first gear. Where this one, you know, you kind of start off in what would be second gear, and the bike isn't really slipping the clutch as much as I would hope it would. Got another pretty steep grade hill right here, but we're kind of up in the power band, so it's really not even losing that much speed. Actually, I'm really impressed right here. Man, it's hauling my big body right up this hill. Far out. It's a beautiful old Ducati. I'm be cautious through this intersection, make sure everybody sees me. Should have beeped the horn a little. Another great thing about this trip is the east side of Austin has changed quite a bit, but it still has those old vibes. And I think it really is going to be a really fitting final voyage, just kind of run the route of its former glory. Oh, just barely missed that light. Oh, here comes a genuine buddy in a Honda Ruckus. Austin really is a great town for scooters. The scooter culture of this town is sort of one of the biggest pushes I had to move out of my town in Montana and come pursue my dreams as a motorcycle enthusiast. Oh man, yeah, we're really bogging down here. Starting up on a hill is really tough. I wonder if that little centrifugal clutch in there needs a little bit of work or something. Yeah, it's strange when it's cold, the clutch does slip a little more and allows the engine to get up into its power band. Oh, speed limit's 30. Appropriate. Here we are at the University of Texas. Let's go try and find a huge bunch of scooters to take some photos with. Usually it's not too hard to find a big flock of them around here somewhere. Man, I can see why this was exactly the tool for the job if you were going to college. I mean, when you're on these little roads here on campus, you don't really need a high-speed bike. The automatic transmission is great. Well, it's great for not having to deal with a clutch. Well, it looks like there might be some kind of festival going on. Might be harder to find a scooter than I had expected. A fitting place to end the road tests right here at the University of Texas football stadium. Well, we couldn't find a flock of scooters to do a photo shoot with, but I figure this is as good a place as any to end this road test of this 1980 Honda Express that was initially intended to be coming here to the University of Texas back in 1981, which was, of course, 40 years ago, as we're in 2021 now. So it's neat to do the old ride again with this beautiful piece of history. Thanks for coming along with me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more of these road tests, and whenever we get an interesting bike in the shop, we're going to want to share what we learn with you guys. So until we see you again, keep it shiny side up.